Hey, brother! Can you put these in your pocket for me?
George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Walter Washington, Jessie Lee Rose. See, many of you are probably familiar with most of those names that I mentioned. But what about the last two? Walter Washington. Jessie Lee Rose. I'll tell you. Walter Washington was a 38-year-old black man who was gunned down by Officer Samuel Geddes on Oneida Street in 2005. Jessie Lee Rose was a 19-year-old boy of Native American descent who died in a fatal altercation with a UPD officer in Addison Miller Park in 2013. See, I mention those names because when we have rallies in Utica, when we have these discussions about Black Lives Matter here in Utica, we often talk about them in the national context, which is important. It's important to say George Floyd. It's important to say Trayvon Martin. It's important to express that solidarity. But when it's only national, when we only talk about it in this general context, and we fail to tie it to what's happening here in Utica, we fail to connect these struggles for justice to action on the ground. To action on the ground. So I say Walter Washington. I say Jessie Lee Rose. And let me be clear. Jessie Lee Rose was not black. He was a young man of Native American descent. But we can't talk about police brutality and the legacy of slavery and as it manifests in our local institutions, in national institutions, and statewide institutions without talking about the legacy of indigenous genocide. Our people didn't just work on these cotton plantations enslaved as if those cotton plantations were just there from the get-go. That land was taken.
That's right.
People were killed.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. Is this better? Can y'all hear me better on this? Okay. And let me tell you something. That legacy lives with us, not only in this national context, but here in Utica. Walter Washington was 38 years old. He had kids. He had a family. He was rooted in this community. Samuel Geddes, the officer who killed him, is now a sergeant in the Utica Police Department. You talking about Black Lives Matter? That don't look like it to me.
Hell yeah.
Jessie Lee Rose was 19. His family questioned the police account that he committed suicide. And as a result of their questioning, they were scared out of Utica. They don't live here anymore. You talk about indigenous lives matter? Here in Utica? What does that look like? So I say that to make a challenge to you all who are gathered today here, who are gathered to advocate for justice, to advocate for Black Lives Mattering. Let's make that matter here. Walter Washington, say that name.
Walter Washington!
Jessie Lee Rose, say that name.
Jessie Lee Rose!
And let me be clear again. When we talk about Black Lives not mattering, we're not simply talking about police brutality. We're talking about underfunded medical institutions, underfunded schools. We're talking about the fact that when activists pushed for bail reform, so when poor people didn't have to sit and languish behind bars, that we had state legislators, also federal legislators who said, you know what, let's take that back. We passed bail reform. We made it so that poor people, most of whom black, didn't have to languish behind bars because they couldn't afford bail. It's sickening. It saddens me that we have to be here and make you understand that this ain't a game. This ain't just a march up Oneida Street. My nieces and nephews play on the ground that is intermixed with Jessie Lee Rose's blood. We just stepped over the very spot where Walter Washington was killed. Let's organize for that. And if we don't, something grave will happen. And I'm not simply talking about riots. And let me be clear, I know some of us disagree on those points. But I want to say this, as MLK said, riots are the language of the unheard. What does that mean? What does that mean, though? It means that it's irrelevant for you to simply disagree or agree on whether or not riot is a legitimate form of protest. No. If riots are the language of the unheard, it means it's time to listen. And I'm not talking about that superficial form of listening in which we just engage in dialogue, in which you just hear what I'm saying. No, I'm talking about listening as a form of incorporating what I say into our institutions, into the way we govern society, into the way we conduct ourselves when we wake up in the morning. That's what Black Lives Matter is supposed to mean, okay? So let me say this, if we don't meet this challenge of making Black Lives Matter on the local level, if we don't push back, something grave awaits us. And like I said, it may not be a riot, something worse. And that grave thing is, as Gail Scott Heron said in the 70s, this cruel old world will continue to drag on, and our lifeless, limp bodies, black bodies, brown bodies, indigenous bodies will continue to drag on with it. So stand up, stand out, and keep going. Push for justice beyond this. Make Walter Washington's life matter. Make Jessie Lee Rose's life matter. Make this world a better place.